The family really is the foundation of any society, and it's so important that we are building strong families, and we can never forget that. But at the same time, I think we need to be very honest about the contributions that many women do make in society without apologizing for them, and wanting women to do the kind of important work that you're doing here at Belmont Abbey, and that so many women like Clare Boothe Luce and like many Catholic saints have done throughout the history of the church.
Welcome back to Gen Z Unplugged. We have a really exciting episode for you all today. Our president, Kimberly Begg, here at the Luce Center, recently appeared on Conversatio, which is the podcast of Belmont Abbey College, and she dives into everything conservative women, from the reasons why so many women hide naturally conservative beliefs to the transformative power of mentorship. She gets into all of the wonderful things that we're doing here at the Luce Center to build up young women and why that mentorship is so important. You all are going to love this episode and this conversation. So without further ado, here's Kimberly on Conversatio.
Welcome to Conversatio, the Belmont Abbey College podcast. This podcast exists to form and transform our community so that each of us can more fully reflect the image of God. I'm Ann Gleason, Assistant Professor of Criminal Justice at Belmont Abbey College and an attorney, and I'll be your host for today's episode, and I'm thrilled to be joined by Kimberly Begg, also an attorney with decades of experience strengthening conservative causes, author, well-known speaker, and president of the Clare Boothe Luce Center for Conservative Women. So Kimberly, could you introduce yourself to us and tell us a little bit about your work?
Absolutely. First of all, thank you so much for having me on. I'm thrilled to be here at Belmont Abbey. I am the president of the Clare Boothe Luce Center for Conservative Women. We are a nonprofit organization that specializes in the conservative outreach, education, and mentorship of young women for the purpose of preparing and promoting conservative women leaders. I am a Catholic. I am married. My husband and I have 5 children. Our baby is 11 years old, and our oldest is 19. And I am an attorney. I've been an attorney throughout my career and worked in a lot of conservative and Catholic causes throughout my career. I've written 2 books, and am finding the challenge right now of working with young women and helping them navigate their way in the world to be uniquely satisfying.
Okay, I love this because when I was invited to do this podcast, I wanted to know a little bit about you and about your work, and so I was so excited to see that so many of the passions that you have align with my own. So specifically, what I'm excited to talk to you about is your work with the Clare Boothe Luce Center. And then your most recent book, The Unbreakable, Saints Who Inspired Saints to Moral Courage. So I want to start with the Clare Boothe Luce Center, and then, but I am excited to go on to the book too as well. So you became the president of the Clare Boothe Luce Center, I believe in 2024, is that correct?
That's correct, last year.
And it has a fascinating history, which I wasn't familiar with the history of it, and so I found that fascinating to read about on the website. So tell us who Clare Boothe Luce was and a little bit about the history of the organization.
Clare Boothe Luce was a remarkable woman. In fact, in the 20th century, everybody knew who Clare Boothe Luce was. Crisis magazine actually named her the most important woman of the 20th century, which is fascinating. She was a mother. She converted to the Catholic faith by Archbishop Fulton Sheen, who brought her into the church. She was a congresswoman, a playwright. She was a war correspondent. She was this fierce truth seeker and this courageous truth teller. And when Michelle Easton founded our organization in 1993, she wanted a strong, faithful woman to exemplify the kind of values that we wanted to pass on to young women. And she chose Clare Boothe Luce, and I think it was a brilliant choice.
Oh, I agree. I was really just amazed at the history of the organization and the type of programming that the center has. Now, when I went on and I happened to read the president's message that you have posted on the website, and you mentioned a couple of things that really struck me. You talked about how leftist propaganda targets women and manipulates them with a vision of womanhood that's lockstep with the leftist agenda. And you talk about women are equal in dignity to men, but they're not the same. And then you talked about how women play a crucial role in shaping society's values. And you have a quote there from Alexis de Tocqueville. And the quote is this: "If anyone asks me what I think the chief cause of the extraordinary prosperity and growing power of this nation, I should answer that it is due to the superiority of their women." So comment on these ideas that you have expressed in this message and on de Tocqueville's observations.
I'd like to start with Tocqueville. I love that quote. Tocqueville, when he was observing the success of the American project, he marveled not only at the strength of the American women, but the respect that American men had for their women. And I think along the way, some of us have lost an appreciation for the importance of women, not just in forming strong families. That's something that a lot of conservatives and Catholics surely realize. We need strong families in the church and out in the world. But also the importance of forming strong women to be out in the world and doing God's work in the world. And that is something that at the beginning of our republic was very important to building our republic. Women were involved in civic institutions, they were involved in their churches, they gathered outside of their homes to discuss ways to strengthen their communities, and it was a very natural part of the founding of our country. And you know, the family really is the foundation of any society, and it's so important that we are building strong families, and we can never forget that. But at the same time, I think we need to be very honest about the contributions that many women do make in society without apologizing for them, and wanting women to do the kind of important work that you're doing here at Belmont Abbey, and that so many women like Clare Boothe Luce and like many Catholic saints have done throughout the history of the church.
Yes, I really see that. There was a judge that I clerked for many years ago who I was actually the first woman that he had hired. It was early in his federal judgeship tenure. And when he hired me, he was, and he went on to hire many women after me, but he explained that how important it was to credential the women who will be the women behind the microphone, because he made the point that so many women are silent and are not the one. They hold these values, but they're not the ones behind the microphone. And you made the point in an article that you wrote in the Federalist, which was linked in that president's message. You referred to a poll that was done about the conservative ideas of young women, and that those ideas are hidden oftentimes, that they keep those very close. So tell us a little bit more about the findings in that poll, and why do you think women tend to hide their conservative views?
Well, women do hide their conservative views, and that poll was specifically focused on women. Before I get into that poll, I want to mention a more recent poll, which was of college students that are men and women. You might have seen this. It was the University of Michigan and Northwestern poll, I believe, that found that 88% of college students admitted to pretending to hold more liberal beliefs than they actually do for the purpose of achieving social and academic success. That's 88%. That is an astounding figure. Now, our poll that we conducted at the Luce Center surveyed young women ages 18 to 24, and we also found that a majority of young women have hidden their viewpoints in order to avoid conflict. I think that is something that we need to address. I think that there are parts of both of those polls that give us reason for hope. I think that truth really is written on our hearts, and young women and young men recognize those truths. They need the support to help them confidently admit them, confidently say them out loud, not just for their own benefit, but for the benefit of others around them. Because sometimes all it takes is to hear one person expressing a truth, told with compassion, told in a compelling, honest way, to give another the confidence to say, well, I'm not the crazy one out there. I see the truth all around me. And to stand up for what is good and true and beautiful, and then encourage others to do so too.
So how does the programming at the Clare Boothe Luce Center promote that? How do you build that kind of confidence in young people?
Mentorship. We believe very strongly that young women need mentors to help them cultivate their own education, to become more virtuous, to become stronger in all areas. So our internship program is really our signature program. We have young women from across the country apply for this program. And when they're with us for 10 weeks over the summer, they receive media training and writing training, and they go to the gun range and they do firearms training and marksmanship. We took them to the UN this past summer, and they got to watch a deliberation at the UN, taking them to the Museum of the Bible. We do so much with them over the summer. We did a book club. We read Erica Bachioki's The Rights of Women this past summer. Wonderful, wonderful book, really looking at the rights of women and why women have these rights, and the importance of women and men collaborating together in society to lift each other up in virtue. And we also have programs on college campuses where we have speakers, and then we have summits where young women come together to hear from conservative women speakers and to meet each other and to develop the kind of friendship and camaraderie that they need to embrace their conservative ideas. But we consider all of this to be a part of the pathway to mentorship, because women and men are relational. We need each other, and it's not enough just to learn about a conservative belief or a Catholic belief or any belief rooted in truth and goodness. We need to have the relationships with others to really draw those gifts out of us. So, so many young men and women today experience their lives through screens, and we believe in the importance of human interaction and in maintaining relationships with our young women. So women don't just pop into a program and pop out and then are forgotten until they go on to their next big challenge. We keep in touch with these women. We help them. We write letters of recommendation for them, but we're also just there for them to be able to have the kind of conversations that they need to have as they're entering their 20s and beyond.
Now, are there also programs that you put on college campuses? I think I read a few things about such programs.
Yes. Our two most important are our campus speakers program. So this week alone, we have Liz Wheeler speaking for us at Hillsdale College, and KT McFarland is at Muhlenberg College in Pennsylvania. One college, which is not particularly known for being very welcome to conservative voices, but we've had a wonderful relationship with, is Berkeley, UC Berkeley in California. And we recently had Reagan Reese and KT McFarland speaking there. But we are usually at Berkeley about 3 times a year. We've established a wonderful relationship with a professor there who loves putting conservative women in front of his audience because, as he says, they have so few opportunities to hear directly from conservative women, and he considers that to be a valuable aspect of their education. So yes, we have the campus speakers program, and then the other campus program that is very popular is our firearms training. We call them our day at the range, and we were just at the University of Dallas on Saturday with college students from UD and also a few faculty members who spent the day out at the range learning about their Second Amendment rights and practicing a very important life skill.
Wow. Now that sounds exciting. Now, some of the work, when I read from your website, I see a lot of echoes of John Paul II's letter to women and Mulieris Dignitatem, and also even Paul VI Humanae Vitae. So, what this Catholic understanding of the role of women and what women are and their unique place in God's plan? When you pull all that together, it's such a rich and inviting idea of what a woman is. Does that type of vision for women come across in your programming?
So we are not a Catholic organization.
Right.
But what we are teaching young women is certainly a part of the natural law. And so women who do not share the Catholic tradition still recognize what we're teaching as an important part of helping them figure out womanhood, helping them figure out how to develop healthy relationships with men and women in their lives. I would say that everything that we're teaching is consistent with the Catholic faith and also consistent with what non-Catholics and Christians and secular men and women understand just to be a part of the reality of what it means to be a woman.
That's it's fantastic programming. I'd love to know what the maximum age is for this program, if I could apply for next summer. Sounds
well,
good.
I'll tell you, one thing that we are developing is a nationwide mentorship program where we will be pairing up younger women and more experienced women, and I think you would be fantastic as a mentor.
Okay. We'll have to talk about that.
To maybe some of our young women who are looking for mentors.
Sure. This is why because I have been involved in such mentorship programs, which is why when I read about what you were doing at the center, it just struck me of how much our passions aligned with one another. So you're not only educating women, but you're also inspiring specifically Catholic women through some of your writing. And one of the things that I have loved about learning about your work was I found out about your book. And your book, Unbreakable, Saints Who Inspired Saints to Moral Courage, which was published by Tan Books 2 years ago, maybe. And so I found this very inspiring. I spent the better part of Sunday reading your book, and when I received it, I actually received it on Saturday, and I jumped right in, started reading it, and then didn't read the preface at first. So I was on my way to church on Sunday, and I was just reflecting on what I had been reading and thought about the fact that so much of what I gained as a child came from stories of my family. And I thought, in a lot of ways, this is similar. This is sort of what you were doing. And then I went home and read the preface to your book. And what did I find on the very first lines of your preface? But this quote, and I'm going to read it directly from the book. When my children were very young, I read a secular parenting book that shared a compelling insight. Families that pass on the stories of their ancestors have children who are more confident and well-grounded than those that lack a culture rooted in the past. I immediately saw the parallel to Catholicism. I thought, what a gift our faith is to all of the world's children. So, having had my own opinions affirmed, I would love for you to comment a little bit more on that, specifically in an age when I feel like so many families do not live with their extended family. They don't live near them. They're not able to access those stories about their ancestors that show that courage and that perseverance, etc.
Well, there has been renewed interest in the saints in recent years. I was baptized Catholic, grew up Catholic in New Jersey, really was never told any stories of the saints in my childhood. And it was when I was in my 20s, married, my husband and I started on our own to learn about the church's very rich heritage. And I saw immediately how neat it was to be a Catholic and to say, okay, well, Joan of Arc, now she was French, but she's part of my tradition. Mm-hmm. She's a Catholic too. And Saint Jerzy Papiuszko is Polish, who's one of the saints in the book. Well, he's a part of my extended family as a Catholic too. And just what a beautiful thing it was to be able to kind of claim all of them as a part of our larger family, to be able to draw from their inspirational stories, their writings, and to be able to use their stories to guide us in our own challenges. I have several children who are very enthusiastic readers, and I have one daughter in particular who pretty much always has her nose in a book. We prefer it when she eats meals without the book, but the book is often there. And something that you realize, especially with children, is the stories that they read, they become a part of their imagination in the same way that their own experiences do. And they really can draw on those lessons and those experiences, very similarly the way that they can draw from their own experiences. So I'm so encouraged that the Catholic Church has started to renew the tradition of passing on the stories of the saints more. We see this in a lot of liturgical living right now, which I think is really very beautiful. And I see so many families benefiting from celebrating Catholic feast days, celebrating the lives of the saints in a way that allows them to live their daily lives while also remembering some of the great saints. And I'm just really encouraged because I think that it is helping today's young people understand better who they are as a Catholic and help them kind of cope through life's very normal challenges.
Yeah. Yeah, I was when I read it, I was thinking back about Paul VI in his apostolic exhortation, saying that modern man listens more willingly to witnesses than to teachers, and if he does listen to teachers, it is because they are witnesses. And I reflected back about how reading these stories, as you say, I mean, I saw that in my own children. I have 4 children and a daughter whose nose is often in a book as well, and I did see that they see witnesses. They see what they observe has more impact on them than what you say to them. And books is a way of doing that. Not quite the same as having a parent exhibiting those virtues, but when they can read about a real person, even one who lived a long time ago, exhibiting those virtues, it has more of an impact on them, I think.
It does. And I would say even, the importance of stories doesn't even have to be a real person. Literature, fictional stories can have a very similar effect on really a person of any age. Those stories also shape you. One of the most damaging aspects of our education system is that we have as a country, stopped passing on classic literature. I only recently discovered that this was done intentionally at the beginning of the 21st century as a part of the, what was the name of George Bush's education plan?
Oh, I'm forgetting the name of
It
it
starts with
too.
a C. It's something.
Yeah,
Okay, you know what I'm
can't
talking
remember.
about.
Yeah.
But it was intentional,
Right.
and it was a way to it was to make young people more competitive in the global economy.
Mm-hmm.
It was to reorient them toward the more serious disciplines of science and math,
Mm-hmm.
and nonfiction, history. But because of that, Common Core, that's what it is.
Common Core.
Common Core.
Yes.
Common Core largely got rid of fiction
Mm-hmm.
for our young people. And when I heard that, it was a revelation, because young people, they learn to love learning through stories.
Yep.
And we've been robbing our young people of this for decades.
Yes.
Now, there's a lot that we get wrong out there, so you can't just pinpoint on this
Right.
this one failure. But really, I think that has been devastating. I've seen it through my own children,
Mm-hmm.
how important it is for them to become excited through the stories told from a book.
Right, and you talk about the fact that, and this was confirmed by my own observations of my own children, but what captures their imagination, especially at those important stages in their
Mm-hmm.
life, those developmental stages, has such a tremendous impact on them.
Mm-hmm.
So I was focused, when I read the book on Sunday, I focused primarily on the chapters on the two female saints, since I was also thinking about your work with the Clare Boothe Luce Center. I focused on St. Joan of Arc and St. Teresa of Calcutta. So those were the two sections of the book that I focused most of my time on. And I noticed some commonalities, so I'm going to show you how well I learned from your book. Some of the commonalities that I noticed were the deep prayer life of both of these saints, the influence of their saintly parents, but a willingness to leave those parents when they heard God's call.
Mm-hmm.
Both of them showed little acts of courage that preceded the moment of testing, where they actually, the acts for which they're known were preceded by many other small acts of courage along the way.
Yes.
And then the absurdity of the plans that God, on a human level, the absurdity of the plans that God had for them. And then most important, I think, was the strength that they had came so much from knowing who they were and why they were made. And so can you elaborate a little bit more on what I see are these commonalities and what you saw in these saints?
Mother Teresa and St. Joan of Arc both had a very clear understanding of their calling in the world. And in both cases, yes, it was a little absurd.
Mm-hmm.
Joan of Arc was a teenage farm girl who felt called to save France during the 100 Years' War from England. And she felt called to save France by leading a French army to drive the English out of France. And it is perhaps the most absurd thing I've ever heard in my life, except that it's true. We actually know more about Joan of Arc than we know of any human being that ever lived in the history of the world before her. Her story is true. And if we didn't have all of that documentation, we might be tempted to say, well, this is just crazy. Somebody made this up. But all the documentation is there.
Mm-hmm.
And to Joan's great credit, she traveled to put herself before the rightful French king and convinced him to allow her to lead an army. And she succeeded because she had the faith, because she knew what her calling was, and she knew that this was what God uniquely wanted her to do.
Mm-hmm.
Mother Teresa had the exact same experience. That's what's so great about this. You can look at a nun like Mother Teresa and somebody we think of as this courageous warrior, Joan of Arc, and say, the two of them had the exact same experience, but they did. And Mother Teresa similarly was told, go back to your convent and, continue on with the work that you're doing. You're doing great. Thumbs up. Keep going. But she uniquely felt called to minister to the poorest of the poor.
Right. Yeah.
In the streets of Calcutta and then throughout the rest of the world. And it took her perseverance and her continuing to approach men who told her, just as they told Joan, that they knew better. But they persevered because they knew the truth of what they were called to do. And it's an example really for all of us, because we all have those moments when we know the right thing to do, and it can be a little scary, and none of us likes feeling as though others think that we're ridiculous.
Especially when those people are people in authority,
Yes.
who you've been taught to respect. And that was one of the things that struck me, was that Joan, when she was confronting the corrupt and jealous church authorities, they were interrogating her. And they were asking if she believed she was subject to church authority, and she responded that I am the servant of all, but our Lord's first. And then Mother Teresa, you pointed out, and this is a quote from you, showed extraordinary courage in condemning evil in the presence of powerful apologists for evil, and specifically referring to President Bill Clinton and many others in the Nobel Peace Prize speech that she gave. So comment a little bit about that. These are women who were willing to swim against the tide.
They were. One of the first interviews I did on the book was a radio interview, and I absolutely loved the question that was presented to me about the figures in the book, because he said, this is a book about courage and moral courage and standing up for what's right. What in the world is Mother Teresa doing in this book? Because we think of her as
humanitarian,
right?
Yeah.
as a great humanitarian. We think of her as meek and maybe even weak. She was this little woman. She was 4 foot. I can't even remember, but she was very small in stature as well. I find her courage to be uniquely inspiring because it was so unexpected. She had been invited to speak as the recipient of the Nobel Peace Prize. And then later on was invited to speak at Bill Clinton's National Prayer Breakfast. And at both of these occasions, she was surrounded by very pro-abortion, very progressive, very important people. And in both of these instances, she used that platform to talk about the dignity of all human life, and to talk about the dignity of the unborn child and the evil of abortion and the great poverty, not only of the babies whose lives are lost to abortion, but also the nations that support abortion. And that was important because she uttered those very strong words in front of the representatives of the most pro-abortion nations in the whole world, in the same room with them. And of course, that was an internationally televised address as well. But the courage that she showed, when we know from our own experience how many people who consider themselves to be pro-life or Catholic or on the side of all that is true and good, in those situations choose not to offend rather than choose to stand up for truth. And that this little woman was able to stand there in both of these situations and speak truth so boldly, never losing her gentleness, which was one of the secrets of her very strong and quiet authority, but that she was able to do this on both of these occasions, I find so inspiring. And in a way, I think she is the example in the book that most of us can draw the most immediate lessons from, because so many of us are put in those situations almost on a daily basis.
Yes, and she was living in a time that we recognize and facing issues that we face, and yet don't respond with the same boldness and the same courage. And I love what you just said about how her quietness was really the source of her effectiveness. Because it was so unexpected to see a tiny little woman speaking so boldly.
And she was so holy.
Yes.
She was so holy that even Bill Clinton wanted her to speak.
Yes.
It's goodness matters. And she was this wonderful humanitarian who loved her fellow man so much. And that was able to resonate with all people, non-Catholics, non-conservatives. President Bill Clinton, he was the Democrat president of the United States at the time. His wife, Hillary Clinton, was there. Al Gore and Tipper Gore were there in that room during that national prayer breakfast. But isn't it fascinating that Mother Teresa is who President Clinton wanted to speak, despite the fact that she was a well-known advocate for life, despite the fact that she was perhaps the best known, other than the Pope, Catholic in the world.
Yes.
This is who Bill Clinton wanted to speak.
But I think that goes back to that Paul VI quote that I referenced earlier, that she's a witness, not just a preacher.
Yes.
And she witnesses that extraordinary love for human beings and the dignity of every human being.
And she used that goodness and the respect that she had earned internationally. She used that, coupled with her bravery, to stand up for the most defenseless in our society. Really a remarkable thing.
Well, and this is actually this whole idea of, of course, the book is about courage. I mean, it's really about the subtitle, Saints Who Inspired Saints to Moral Courage. You really direct the book, if I'm not mistaken, it's directed more towards the parents than it is. It's not as if you wrote the stories at a third grade level. I mean, you wrote the stories at the level that the parents would read the stories, and then presumably pass those stories on to their children and encourage their children to read similar stories. And one of the things that, to explain to us why you chose to write the book in that way, directed towards parents, and then part of the book is you're encouraging parents to exhibit the virtue that they expect their children to get.
Well, a few things. I wanted to write a book that was fast-paced enough and interesting enough and had compelling enough stories that mothers and fathers who are very busy in their day-to-day life would be able to pick up easily. I've had people tell me they read the entire book. It's 200 pages, cover to cover, in one day. So you probably notice the stories are pretty fast-paced.
This is what I did on Sunday.
Excellent, right. So I wanted a book that parents, it would be accessible for parents, no matter what other responsibilities they have. But I also wanted a book that they would feel comfortable reading aloud to their children. So if you'll notice, even the stories about the martyrs are not graphic in a way that would give a parent pause about sharing this story with even a young child. But I also wanted to make it fast-paced enough and easy enough that kids who are very accustomed to reading Harry Potter and other fast-paced novels would be able to pick up and read. So the level is about at, I'd say, a middle school, high school level.
Right.
So that it would be accessible. But our families should know these stories. They're not just for parents, they're not just for children. What we need to be doing a better job of is building a Catholic culture in our home. And I think that stories about the saints really need to be at the heart of that.
Yes, and there's some very good admonitions, I would say, for parents in the book that I think are something that I was really struck by. And if you'll bear with me, I want to read one of this is towards the end. It's actually in the conclusion. You say, we live in a post-Christian society that celebrates sin as virtue, rejects the existence of objective truth, especially the truth that Jesus Christ is the way, the truth, and the life, and punishes nonconformists as haters through shaming, slander, ostracization, and canceling. Christians who are immersed in the world without appreciating the soul-sacrificing dangers of the world will have great difficulty being courageous at the testing point. So speak a little bit about that. So where that is clearly the thrust of the book is admonishing or cautioning parents to these are strong words, but you are cautioning them about these are souls that are at stake. We're in a battle.
We love our children. They are not ours. They are God's children, and we have been entrusted with raising them. And they're not just for our enjoyment. We have responsibilities to God to raise them in a way that they will be strong enough to resist those soul-endangering temptations in the world. And one of those soul-endangering temptations is the temptation to remain silent and to let evil go unchallenged. So I often hear the saying that parents should be more interested in getting their kids into heaven than Harvard. It's even starker than that. It's not just the difference between heaven and Harvard. Our souls belong with Christ in heaven, and it is our job to make sure that they have learned from us what they need to, that their minds have been formed, that their hearts have been formed, that they have a will, that they even know that their job as parents is to help their children unite their will with God's will. And it is a dangerous world out there. And there are lots of temptations to help our children be successful materially and on the world's terms. None of that really matters if we lose our children and their salvation. And I think that it's really important that parents pause during their parenting and with all of the activities and getting their kids into college and making sure that they're doing the soccer practice and doing all of the after school activities and helping with homework. Parenting is a job that needs to really be woven into all of the activities. And I think it's very difficult to do that without stories that become a part of us and that help us reinforce the kind of culture that these kids are going to need to help them be strong enough to continue on their path the way that Christ expects them to.
Mm-hmm. And you also make some points about ways in which parents can witness to their children in small ways. Again, those little preparations for teaching children to be courageous in small ways so that they're ready for that testing point. So what are some of the examples that you would offer of that?
There are lots of real life ways. One way, I remember just maybe a decade ago, my husband and I became very intentional. When we were out at a restaurant, we were going to say grace. Mm-hmm. You don't see a whole lot of families do that. They might do it at home, but you don't see them doing it out in public. So, that's something that our family always does. In fact, really all of our kids, no matter what they're eating or drinking, I've children who say grace over, every single meal and really every single beverage that they have at home, which is very sweet, and we really should be thanking God for all of the food and all of the gifts, throughout all of our days. But I think saying grace in public is sort of a shocking, but also a very easy thing to do for some people. I always wear my miraculous medal. I get a lot of compliments on it, and I enjoy telling people that it's a miraculous medal because it happens to be just a very beautiful miraculous medal. So wearing a miraculous medal or a crucifix, I think, is one way to do it. My kids have some great Catholic T-shirts that they really enjoy. In fact, a few of them have gone off to different summer camps wearing them. And it's interesting because some of the other Catholic kids will recognize some of the saints or some of the sayings on it and come over and say, wow, I like your shirt. And a lot of that is sometimes code for, I'm Catholic too. Can we be friends now?
Yeah.
But I think that some of these outward signs are ways that we can find each other. And once you start doing them, it feels a little... it feels a little risky at first, and then it doesn't. And that's why, one of the points in the book is that we have to develop a habit of courage. And these little ways that we do them might feel a little unnatural at first because those around us are not doing them, and they're intentionally not doing them. But you quickly realize that as soon as you're wearing your miraculous medal and your Catholic T-shirts and you're saying grace, and you have that pro-life sticker on your car, it really does become a part of your life, and it becomes less scary. And it also helps you find your people.
Yes, we've had many people come up to us when we pray as a family, when we would be in a restaurant and all 6 of us would start saying the blessing, and people would come over to us and make comments afterwards because, you're right, it helps you find your people, so to speak. So now I want to ask you a more personal question. So you talk about all the saints that inspire the saints in this book. So who are the saints that you lean on at this season of your life? Maybe it changes from time to time, but who are the saints that you lean on?
It does change from time to time, but I will tell you, the saints that I wrote about in that book are really my go-to. The year that I spent writing that book was probably the happiest year of my life. I loved having these saint stories in my head every single day, writing about them, praying to them, and I find myself thinking about them a lot. And praying to them a lot. The inspiration for the book was Blessed Jerzy Papiuszko. I find his courage in standing up for truth in communist Poland during the Cold War. We talked about Mother Teresa's quiet strength. He also had a very quiet strength. But he was able to inspire thousands and thousands of people, not just in Poland, but really throughout the Eastern Bloc because of his courage, which eventually got him killed. He was murdered by the communists in Poland. But his story was one that I found myself going to time and time again. I pray to Blessed Jerzy Papiuszko. I pray to St. Joan of Arc a lot. I absolutely love her story. St. Therese is a favorite in our household. I gave my oldest daughter, who just turned 16, St. Therese when she was a child. My daughter was a very strong-willed child, very emotional like St. Therese. And I gave her Therese when she was little, and she's had a very strong devotion to St. Therese ever since then. And I think all of that has worked out beautifully because she's also a very beautiful, faithful young woman. I was, I think, about 12 years old when St. Therese made the conscious decision and asked for God's help in helping unite her will to God's will and not be so, not just emotional, but not be so manipulative emotionally as a child. And from that point on, she was intentionally living her spirituality of the little way. and wanting to do everything in her life, the good and the bad, and every single step of the way. She wanted to give it all to Christ. So those are some of the saints that have meant a lot to me, but also have meant a lot to our family.
Yes, yes. Well, this has been a wonderful conversation, and with that inspiration of these beautiful saints that have so inspired you, we'll go ahead and close our conversation. But as we conclude, thank you to the audience for joining us, and thank you, Kimberly, especially for joining us for this wonderful conversation. I've really enjoyed it. And if you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe and tell your friends that Conversatio is available on Spotify, Apple, and Google Podcasts. And until next time, God bless.